Good evening. My name is Brian McMahon, and I am the chair of the Jackson County Democratic Party, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome each of you out tonight to the first of two forums to showcase and allow you to have an opportunity to meet and get to know our Democratic candidates. You know, we are Democrats, and by virtue of the name Democrat, we believe in two bedrock principles. One is that of democracy, and secondly, we believe in the democratic process. So we want to be able tonight to have a forum to allow you to get to know the candidates to where you, the people, can make the choice through a civil democratic process and determine who our nominee for the party is going to be. So at this time, I'm going to recognize Jennifer Montsinger, the president of the Democratic Women of Jackson County, and let's get the show started.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to come. We wanted for you to have the opportunity to get to know our wealth of candidates in our upcoming elections and to hear from them personally what they stand for, what their principles and goals are, so that we can all be an informed electorate. We're going to start with the candidates in the sheriff's race, and they will answer structured questions that they have seen ahead of time but don't know specifically which ones we're going to be asking. And when they're finished, they will leave the table, and our candidates in the North Carolina 50 race will come up, and they will also answer questions. So I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to our moderator, Marcia Kreitz. Marcia is a 27-year resident of Jackson County, 37, excuse me, lives in the Greens Creek community, and her training, her professional training is in social work, particularly in community development. She's been involved in many projects over the years, including recently an initiative to develop transitional housing for women. She leads leadership groups for the local community colleges and for other programs in the community. She, for the last 25 years, I believe, has worked as a landscaper for a family business, and 8 years ago started her own design firm. She is the owner of Harvest Moon Gardens, which is a retreat center and vacation rental, and she is well versed in moderating these kinds of programs. So welcome, Marcia. Thank you for being here. As you may have noticed, we had some microphone problems, so we could share this one microphone in a very collaborative way. And I will be here to transmit it from head to head.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the forum and to tell you a little bit how the process will work tonight. We want to make this as fair and open to our candidates and to the audience as possible. And there are a few little ground rules we'll go through so we can make that happen more easily. The first is that I'm going to ask you to hold your applause for the sheriff's candidates until they've all finished speaking. And they will be answering your questions, and then they have a chance to give you a little 2-minute spiel about what they stand for, basically. The other thing is that if you need to get up and stand up or go to the restroom, do that quietly because we're not going to have an intermission tonight. After the program is over, you'll have a chance to mingle with the candidates and get more information about, I guess some of the information is downstairs and some is
It's all in the brochure.
It's all in the brochure.
There are
Okay.
information sheets on the back of your agenda.
Okay. So, with no further ado, let's welcome Spring and our candidates here at the same time. We have a rich panel of sheriff wannabes up here, and we are eager to hear what they have to say and to learn more about their experience. We draw 3 questions randomly from those that you were given. and each of you will have a chance to answer those. We have a timekeeper here who has held up your sign. So tell us what the yellow sign means.
1 minute.
1 minute left, and that means all done. So I encourage you to stay within your time limits, and this thing will move smoothly, and we will get to hear from everybody. Do our candidates have any questions or concerns that we need to deal with before? All right. We're going to start at the beginning of the table with Ron McDonald's, and the first question is about operating the county jail. This is one of the sheriff's main responsibilities. What do you think is the greatest challenge of operating our jail, and how would you deal with that challenge?
I'm going to need that. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting us out, and thank you all for coming. The operation of the jail is probably the most liable operation that the sheriff has. It is in the event that we have any accident, anything in the jail, it falls on the sheriff's responsibility. It's imperative that through the operation of the jail, that policies and procedures are followed. They're set in place for a reason. We have to protect the inmates as well as we have to protect the custodians of the jailers we employ. When something does not go right, because somebody didn't follow policy and procedure, it's a must that we employ the people that will do this. It's imperative that we maintain the integrity of the jail, integrity of the sheriff's office, and by doing that, we have to follow those procedures. They're set forth by the state of North Carolina, and there's not any discretion there. It has to be done. We have to do things that protect the inmates from the time that they're incarcerated. If we bring them through the intake, from the time that they're brought in, if they're released, that's well and good. If they're incarcerated, they become our responsibility and our responsibility solely. And I don't know anybody in here that does not want their brother, sister, or loved one taking the best care possible while they're in that facility. It is the sheriff's responsibility to make sure that that's done.
Thank you. One of the greatest challenges to operating a detention facility is balancing the needs of the inmates with security measures that must be in place in order to protect the general public. Running a local jail is far more than just locking up prisoners until their court date. Proper efforts must be taken to keep the facility secure and to prevent unauthorized entrance, while at the same time still providing basic services to those who are being detained. A local jail is unique in the fact that many of the people who are being detained are awaiting their court appearance and have not been convicted of their criminal charges. So the guidelines for jails are different than what might be seen in a state facility, or those responsible for the operation of the jail must make every effort to ensure that the public is protected, but also considering that those awaiting trial are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Others could also be detained for civil matters such as child support enforcement orders. These complexities place a special burden on jail operations, and the fair treatment must be granted to those incarcerated while maintaining that security that the public demands. There are also many concerns about the length of time that some individuals spend in a local facility awaiting trial. Many people get held up in this process for several months, if not years. Procedures must be explored that would provide some additional services for those who are incarcerated for long time frames. As sheriff, one of the first priorities would be to determine that each and every person assigned to the detention center staff is well trained and exceeds the state minimum requirements. When dealing with the infringement of rights and freedoms of those accused, the staff that are tasked with supervising detainees must have a grasp on what their duties are from both the public protection perspective as well as services that need to be provided to those incarcerated. In addition to reviewing the training levels, a review of the jail policies and procedures would be conducted as a verification process to allow the public, as well as the county leadership, to see that the standards have been reviewed and they are in accordance with the mandates that exist. This approach allows for transparency within the jail operations by having periodic reviews. It keeps the citizens informed that the operations of the detention center are current with the best practices of security and the well-being for those being housed. The public expects to be safe and secure in their homes. They expect those responsible for the detention centers to maintain that security for them. and it must be a top priority for us while still meeting the needs of those incarcerated. Thank you.
As always, when an inmate is taken into custody, it's to monitor their safety and care, and for illegal activities, especially when they are receiving visitors. Because this is a point that things can be brought in without the knowledge of law enforcement. Therefore, it is important that they be monitored for any activity where they are being transported from one, moved from one cell to the other, or whatever the situation may be. But also make sure that they receive proper care and treatment.
Thank you. Also, I agree with the other candidates, but to touch on that, the jail is probably the highest liability the sheriff's office has. You are responsible for the safety and the care of the inmates while they're in your custody. And like Mr. Lillard said, making sure that all of your personnel are well-trained and are state certified and also able to perform their jobs to state certifications and beyond. Also, I think it's important that you have a medical staff. That's a necessity. A nurse on site as well as on-call medical personnel for emergencies that are unforeseen. Thank you.
Being a candidate that has served as a jail administrator here in Jackson County, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the jail operations. The jail operations from Jackson County consist of policies and procedures. It's up to date and current with the state standards. Our detention officers employed at the sheriff's office are state certified detention officers. I myself hold a state certification as a detention officer. Our jail in Jackson County was built in the early 2000s. We occupied the jail as a sheriff's office in 2003. The biggest challenge facing the sheriff's office today and the new leader of the sheriff's office for Jackson County is the technology that's in place today in our current jail. The jail technology that exists today was put in the establishment in the early 90s. So it needs to be updated, rewritten, and modern technology that's compatible with today's technology is a must for the new sheriff of Jackson County. The sheriff's office also has to have room to expand and for future growth. Today we manage a 72-bed jail with future growth on the horizon. Our female population has greatly expanded over the years. We have a number of outreach organizations, a number of volunteer groups, and a number of individuals that come in and do jail ministries, outreach programs, and educational services for our inmates. It's important to see that our inmates' needs are met, so the future sheriff of Jackson County must make sure that the jail is maintained to the highest standard for the future.
The current jail that they have here in Jackson County, it does have some adequate space. It is in need of some updates, much needed updates that's going to have to take place over the next few years to get everybody up and running on the same page. The biggest issues for the jail itself is number one, equipment, number two, staffing, and number three would be procedures. Those procedures need to be looked at when inmates are processed through the center, how they're actually processed through the center, and the need for the safety of not only the officer, the arresting officer, the inmate themselves, and then the jail staff as well. A jail in itself is not a place that anyone wants to be. And when you do have someone brought into jail or processed as an inmate, whenever they go through the procedures and stuff, you don't want to make it to a point that it's like a hotel stay for them. You want them to say, hey, I don't want to come back to this jail no more. They're strict, they make you do what you need to do, and I don't want to go back there anymore. That way the recidivism, we cut that down and keep it. Markham County, as many inmates will tell you,
that have to go to a certain time in Buncombe County, they do not want to go back to Buncombe County, because it is a strict jail. They require them to do such things. They do give them like an hour a day over there, outside time, which that needs to be given to all inmates, that's required by the state. But as far as what needs to be done immediately, equipment, restructure the staff, and make sure that you have the right staff in the right locations, and adequate staff to handle court duties and other duties that may arise during the daytime. During the daytime, they're transporting prisoners up to the courtroom, and you don't want to rob from your jail staff in order to go up and do that. And then you have your bailiffs that will also be taking care of the courtroom itself. But the courtroom itself is another priority for the sheriff. He must maintain that. That is where your bailiffs need to be well trained. They need to be, actually, they need to be as highly trained as any other officer on the road, because they need to be able to get out there and do what they need to do to protect that judge or anybody else within that courtroom system. But as far as that, it will take some time, the equipment, the staffing, and the procedures, and all that will be looked at one time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll move on to the next question now. And this time, we're going to start with Steve Lillard. And the question for you, gentlemen, is this. The Sheriff's Office has one of the largest budgets of any local government department. As Sheriff, you will be responsible for the oversight and the accountability of the budget, which is primarily funded by tax dollars. What skills or qualifications do you possess that will assist you in this task?
Thank you. Public budgets are a great concern to tax-paying citizens. It is expected that the decisions that are made will be in the best interest of the community while addressing specific needs that are identified within the county. The annual budget process draws much public involvement and must be approached with a sense of transparency and openness to make sure that members of the public are aware of the current issues and have the opportunity to question the decisions that are made. During my time as a captain and a major at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, I had the opportunity to assist with the preparation of the departmental budget each year, as well as to monitoring the ongoing expenditures that took place. This experience exposed me to the challenges that exist when making purchasing decisions, with the understanding that the allotted funds must be sufficient to maintain the operations for the entire year. Close management is required and spending must be monitored in order to avoid shortfalls within the line items while making sure that the needs of the public are still being met. This can be a difficult task at times, but by having my experience at the Sheriff's Office, I'll be able to manage all aspects of the budget, and we'll work closely with the fellow staff to identify concerns and spending patterns that may not be in the best interest of the agency. In addition to my experience with the Sheriff's Office, I've also assisted with the management and justification of the Western Carolina University Police Department's budget for the past 3 years. This budget, while not as large as the Sheriff's Office, must also be managed, and spending decisions are evaluated as to how they will most impact the operations of the agency. Budgeting for any law enforcement agency must be approached with an understanding that the funds are being spent or tax dollars, and care must be given to each decision so that the use of the money is clearly to advance the public's need. Also, any budget that uses tax dollars must be viewed with 3 key elements in mind: efficiency, effectiveness, and equity. The citizens and taxpayers of any community want to know that their public dollars are being spent in a fashion that's consistent with meeting the community needs, but not in a wasteful or unfair manner. My experience will aid me in making the best decisions with the monies that are available, while also looking out for all of the welfare of each and every citizen. Thank you.
Checking out the unusual activities that are being called in by concerned citizens should be a priority and be given first priority, and check and talk to these people as to why and where they think all drugs that is concerning their community that's coming in and so forth has to take action on. Respond, give it 100%, check it out, see that if it can be a halt put to the manufacturing of drugs. Thank you.
Back on the budget, is that what you want to answer?
Yes.
Back on the budget, I too think it needs to be approached with openness and public involvement, and also with all your staff, to not be wasteful. My experience, I'm a retired staff sergeant now at the 210th and was on active duty also, so we was in charge of millions of dollars of equipment. Also in the private sector, I was a manager of a building supply business for about 14 years. I was in charge of inventory personnel, day-to-day operations, did a lot with the budgets. This was a $45 million a year company, so I think my experience with that would be a big help in this aspect. Thank you.
As sheriff of Jackson County, I would provide over 25 years of true law enforcement experience as a deputy sheriff and detention officer dedicated to the service of the people of Jackson County. My understanding of the operations of the sheriff's office, from the courts to the detention center, special operations, patrol, administration, investigations, and so on, has allowed me to have an understanding and the need for each division firsthand. For over 10 years, I have been part of the budget planning process of the sheriff's office, and as the sheriff, I will work with the county leaders to provide an adequate budget to fulfill the duties of sheriff of Jackson County. I will seek state and federal grant funding opportunities to supplement the sheriff's office budget in order to bring the best law enforcement services to the citizens of Jackson County. Being a good steward of the tax dollars is impertinent to the establishment of a trusted relationship with each and every taxpayer in Jackson County. Thank you.
I've been involved in several different budgets, and provide documentation and justification for whatever line item that you may have on that budget or within that budget. We all know as our personal budgets, if you have a strict life the way I do, a personal budget, you better be on the mark or you're gonna get it. I work for the local cancer center here. We have a budget there that we have to provide justification for, making Jackson Lodge 81 turn over to police. I was president of it there before I left and went to Iraq. When I went to Iraq, I was responsible for the budgets of some of the police departments there that were setting up and trying to train the officers in to make sure that they had adequate means and the needs that they had for their daily operations there. But the main thing for any budget is justification. You must provide that justification for whatever it is, whatever line item it is, and any time that you can save the taxpayers money, I'm sure they're going to appreciate that.
One more to go.
I believe that the sheriff's budget is probably the largest budget in the county government. I'm well aware of what checks and balances are. I've owned my own business for the past 12 years. I started out with nothing but $1 and prayer. Now it's worth $500,000. I've built that over the past 10 years. I know well what it takes to run a business. I know that you have to have checks and balances. And I believe that with the sheriff's budget, there's got to be transparency. The citizens of Jackson County know every dollar spent, that it's gone to the best benefit of their tax dollars. You can't just waste money and spend it for frivolous things. It has to be accounted for, it has to show that it has some value, and I believe that with the 12 years of experience that I've had in business, that I'm well aware of what it takes to run the budget. It's on a smaller scale, but the principles are all the same. You have to stay within the budget, you have checks and balances, and it has to be that way.
All right, our third and final question for these gentlemen is one that's a little bit of a hard topic for all of us. Each time we hear about another school shooting somewhere in this country, we wonder if our local community is ready to handle that kind of tragedy if it were to happen here. Would you share your thoughts about school security and particularly about the need for school resource officers? And this time, Michael will give us a start.
and treatment and safety. Scan all persons and their personal belongings upon entering the school's property. Drill the students every 3 months on action on what action that is to take if a shooting should occur. There should be 2 resource officers on duty should one fall in the line of duty to protect the remaining innocent and children and so forth. Thank you.
I think the need for school resource officers are a high priority because your school resource officers are your first line of defense in case you do have an emergency at one of our schools. And everybody knows the children are our future. So if I was elected sheriff, my goal would be to have the best safety plan in place at schools to protect our teachers and our children, and go into the schools and work with all the teachers to develop this safety plan. And also, we have patrol deputies that are out patrolling the communities and everything, and there is no reason why these patrol deputies, as part of their responsibilities, especially at the schools where there is not a school resource officer, have these patrols go by periodically and do walkthroughs, go in and have lunches or breakfast with the kids, sit down and interact with the kids, talk to the teachers. I think this is a necessity. Get the kids back involved. Community involvement is the best resource we have as law enforcement officers, in my opinion. Thank you.
As Sheriff of Jackson County, I feel it is extremely important to continue to have a good relationship and partnership with our local school leaders to provide the safest facilities we can for our students and our educators. This can be accomplished through many resources that we have within our county currently. We also can accomplish this by reaching out to our private charter schools and private schools within the county. The Jackson County has the need to provide these schools with adequate safety plans, training, and response guidelines to ensure that a safe learning environment. As the Sheriff of Jackson County, I will ensure that all deputies are trained, equipped to the highest standard to respond to any emergency in Jackson County. I will work with all schools to conduct an annual safety plan. I feel it's important to have an annual review of each safety plan in each school in this county, public or private. And to determine the individual needs of these schools, we will strive as the sheriff's office to provide them the best available training, equipment, knowledge that we have to make sure each student in Jackson County goes home at the end of the day. Thank you.
As a father of 3, I know very well the need for an SRO in a school. Whenever you as a parent drop your child off in the morning at that school, you want to know that evening there's going to be no problems. You're going to be able to come pick your child up and there not be any problems. The school, as far as I know, they work with officers well now. Within the community, they do a lot of things. As far as Jackson County, do I think they are ready for something like that? It would be a tragic day, and my heart goes out to any family that has to suffer through a school shooting. But Jackson County, I think it would be a shock, but I believe the people are resilient here. I believe they pull together, and I believe that we would come out of this and do the right thing. But as far as our SROs in the school, I think your SRO needs the proper training. He needs to be well equipped to do what he needs to do on the job. He is the first line of defense, or she, whoever it may be. If they're having trouble, they need to be able to get to us, and then we have a rapid deployment plan for every school. The schools are aware of that. That needs to be a constant drill once a year, so that they know, the officers know that rapid deployment, whenever you dispense into that school, what your job is, how you're going to go, and how quickly you can get there. You do need safety plans in there. Work with your principals, and most of your principals principals probably already have a safety plan written out, for those schools. But I think for Jackson County, I hope and pray that it never happens here. But if it does, I think Jackson County will be able to handle it. And I think as your sheriff, I would see that your SROs in the schools are well-trained and equipped to handle any such emergency that involves your children. That way, you have no concerns when you're on your job. You can work and do what you need to do and not worry about your child and their safety while they're continuing their education.
I think it's a shame that we've come to one place in life that we have to be concerned about our children in school. Graduated high school carrying a buck knife on my side. Never thought about violence, but today we have it. Resource officers, I think, are a very, very important part of our law enforcement community. I believe that they're a necessity. We only have, I think, 2 schools, except with the exception of the charter schools in Jackson County, that don't have it. As sheriff, I would work diligently with the county commissioners and the school board to see if we could not find funding to be able to provide those other 2 officers and possibly into the charter schools. What we need to understand is we don't need to wait. We need to be proactive. When a shooting happens, it's too late. There's currently no training right now between interdepartments, Highway Patrol, Sheriff's Office, Town Police, Western Carolina University. There's no common ground there. I bet you if you ask part of the deputies that maybe have never gone to school, Western, where Killian Annex was, they wouldn't know. On Western Carolina's campus, they would not know. What happens if we're not immune to this? We're not. If it can happen at Virginia Tech or it can happen anywhere else, it can happen here at Western Carolina University. We have 2 colleges, the high school and the other elementary schools. It's possible, but we don't need to wait till the last minute. If I were the sheriff of Jackson County and I hope to be elected sheriff, that's a must. Train with each individual department as a coalition, because I'm telling you, if it happens, we're going to need all the help we can get. And when you call for help and they don't know where they're going, they don't have a common ground to stand on, they cannot assist each other. It will be a mess, and who's going to pay for it? The families of children. We need training, we need education, and we need to move forward and be able to provide these officers for the schools.
Thank you. As evident from everyone's comments, providing a safe and secure educational environment for our children is a priority for every candidate. The safety of children should be a department for each, or priority for each department that is associated with the learning process, and we have to work together to make sure that those needs are being met. Safety at our schools is not just a law enforcement function, but it should be of the utmost importance to administrators, teachers, staff, and parents. Everyone has a role to play in making sure that our schools are safe, while still meeting the educational and personal needs of each child. Last year, I had the opportunity to participate on an assessment team that visited each of the public schools in Jackson County. And our intent was to evaluate the existing security conditions of the buildings and to make recommendations of how security measures could be improved. Many of the schools are difficult to secure from the standpoint that doors have to be left unlocked. High schools, places like that, the children change classes. So, you can't always be in a lockdown situation. And this has some additional challenges because there's multiple doors and entrances to some of these buildings. And it's not practical to try to come up with funding to redesign each and every school in Jackson County. So we have to look at other alternatives for trying to meet those security efforts. Having a well-trained, experienced officer on hand to deal with those situations is probably our best option for that. The addition of officers does have its drawbacks as well. Funding is always an issue, and partnerships must be built with every stakeholder that's involved so that we can explore options, explore funding options, explore ways of utilizing those resources. In addition to the funding issue, we have to have a selection process for school resource officers. It should be carefully planned out and to ensure that the people assigned to the schools understand that their role in the public safety community and that they are committed to working with the school officials to meet the needs of the students. The positions are more than law enforcement officers, they're mentors for our young people. And we need to make sure that we have the most well-trained and the best officers suited for those positions to be on duty at our schools. I've also had the opportunity to supervise SROs in the past, and I feel that I have a good understanding of what their needs are on a daily basis. I've also had the opportunity to work with the current and previous superintendents and feel that I've gained a great understanding of the perspective of the school board and the administration and from the teaching standpoint. Dr. Murray and Dr. Nations care about the students, and I feel that my experience in working with the superintendent's office in the past has assisted me and will assist me with the efforts as we coordinate to come up with this problem. I will work hard to identify funding for school resource officers and will be diligent with the selection process to ensure that the officers protecting our children are trained, experienced, and prepared to meet the needs that exist within the school system. I will also review the cost associated with the SRO program and be open to discussions on how we can best utilize the funds that are available to meet the greatest need. This will not be an easy task, but I'm dedicated to the safety of our children and will work hard to ensure that every measure is taken to prevent a crisis from occurring in Jackson County. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for such thoughtful responses. And now it's time for you to hear a little bit from each of these gentlemen about their philosophy, their concern, why they want this job in the first place. So again, you will have 2 minutes for this answer, and our timekeeper will still be at work. We're going to start this time with Glenn in a minute.
Thank you. If I'm elected sheriff of Jackson County, my goal is to make sure that Jackson County is safe for all of our citizens and to enforce all the laws of North Carolina without bias. My commitment to the service of the sheriff's office, while at the same time being aware of the individual rights of the citizens of Jackson County, is of the utmost importance. The employees of the sheriff's office will conduct ourselves as professionals at all times and to perform all law enforcement actions in the most efficient manner possible. The sheriff's office will serve the citizens of Jackson County with respect and the courtesy they deserve. And what I would like to do would be to have an open door policy. Concentrate, as we just said, on the safety in our schools. Always be proactive and not reactive. Being visible all the time. Have a good working relationship with all the agencies inside and outside of Jackson County on our borders. Answering all calls for service. Return all phone calls in a timely manner. And also that every officer will be held accountable for their actions. And always, always listen to the citizens and remember that they have a voice. Thank you very much.
As Sheriff of Jackson County, I want the sheriff's office to move forward in a new direction in the upcoming year. I want to reach out to the citizens of Jackson County. I want the citizens to be involved. I want our officers to be involved. Community involvement is the key to a good functioning sheriff's office and a good community response. We at the sheriff's office learn what goes on from many of you. I had the opportunity to sit here and watch many of you while these other candidates were speaking, and on the topic of school safety, many of you were very in tune to that one topic. That's a topic that's very important to each and every candidate sitting up here. I would like to tell you, as an inside 25-year veteran of the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the training is conducted today is conducted through Southwestern Community College. The 2 contractors that they hire to conduct the training throughout Western North Carolina is deputy sheriffs employed with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. So when you go home tonight, rest assured that every effort's being made to keep your children safe. I want to reach out to you in the future to be active with everything that goes on in our community, be transparent, and have a relationship with our citizens. It's beyond what we've ever had. Thank you.
On my bio there, I didn't give much. I don't think I got the chance to give them my bio there, but just for those of you who don't know, Doug Farmer, I've got 16 years experience in law enforcement. During that time period, I've been a detention officer, a patrol officer, a detective, and a sergeant here with Sylva PD now. I've done a lot of different things. I've been an international police officer, served in Iraq over there for a year, and I'm fortunate now to be back home in my hometown. I've worked for the Macon County Sheriff's Office for several years there, and through working with these departments, I've seen the successes and failures of these departments. I've learned from those successes and those failures, and I believe I can take that knowledge that I've gained from those in the direction I want to take the sheriff's department, and I believe I can make it thrive. And we know that one of the biggest things, and everybody here agrees on that drugs is one of the biggest things for Jackson County right now. It fuels a lot of our other crimes that we have out here. I will enforce the law strictly and aggressively pursue these other people that deal this stuff up on our streets, try to put them in jail and keep them there until they can get rehab or otherwise. And with all that being said, and he related to the SRO is a very important position. We need to make sure that we've got the right personnel in that position, well trained, constantly trained, not just training every once in a while. But as a law enforcement instructor too, I know the capacity of which you can train somebody, and you can get them up and running, get them thinking new thoughts, get new ideas out there that you can learn from different instructors. And for Jackson County, I want nothing more than to be the new leader with a new vision and send this county in a new direction than what we're currently headed. Thank you.
I've been a sworn law enforcement officer for 17 years. Owned and operated my own business for the past 12 years. Those two things alone, I think, make me a credible candidate to be sheriff of Jackson County. It's almost daily that I hear somebody say, come out at 10 o'clock at night at my home. What's the traffic below my house? See what's going on. I've called the sheriff's department, I've called town police, I've called whichever agency. But nothing seems to be done about it. Folks, I want to build a solid foundation. I want to fix what's broke. If we don't have a solid foundation, there's no use in looking to move into the future. We have to fix things now. We have to be proactive now, not wait till later. I've built my entire life on one principle, and that was my integrity. When I graduated high school, I was voted by my classmates the best citizen. Didn't think a whole lot about it at the time. I wanted to be most athletic. I wanted to be most likely to succeed. But looking back at it now, I see what my classmates thought of me, and from that point forward, I have protected my integrity through law enforcement, through business, up until this current day. If elected sheriff, that integrity will be extended on to the department through the actions of the deputies. They will respect and honor the citizens of Jackson County, and they'll treat them accordingly, and that respect and that dignity will be maintained, and the integrity of the sheriff's department will regain itself. Thank you.
Like Sergeant Farmer, my biography did leave a couple of things out. Had some experience in a couple of different places. I have worked for 3 separate agencies. I started out at the sheriff's office. I worked as a patrol officer, an investigator. I worked for the town of Sylva for several years as a criminal investigator. Moved into the administration level of law enforcement, management, supervision. I'm very familiar with all aspects of law enforcement. I've been an investigator. I've investigated some very, very harsh things that happen to people. I've had to sit with families and give them very, very heartbreaking news. And I think that my experience across the agencies and at the different levels has prepared me to be your next sheriff of Jackson County. I think we have to focus upon the priorities, the things that are important to people. We look at one of the topics that we didn't get to tonight was narcotics. It's a concern in our community. It's a concern in our schools. I have supervised narcotics officers, and I have worked drug cases myself. I can handle those situations and direct the sheriff's office in a way to where we can meet that need. Several months ago, President Obama reauthorized the Violence Against Women's Act, and we looked at Jackson County. 2 sections of that act focus upon safety for Indian women and college students. And we have 2 universities, and we have part of the law boundary that sits in Jackson County. We have to understand our territory, understand the needs of the people that we serve, and be vigilant in meeting their needs. I feel that my experience will help me to meet those needs. I plan to be open and honest with the public. Working together, we can solve problems. I don't claim that I have all the answers, but I think with informed citizens, having good procedures in place, we can meet the needs that we see before us, and we can create a better quality of life in Jackson County. That should be not only the goal for whoever's elected sheriff, that should be all of our goals, including those running for other offices as well. Working together, collaboration, and working and assisting one another will help us to make Jackson County a better place. Thank you.
I'd like to share with you my opportunity here that when I first stepped into security in May of '78, and so I'm going to read it down for you. Began working in security at Ghostown in the Sky Maggie Valley. His position as armed guard included meeting and greeting the guests, watching for unauthorized behavior, providing first and aid to the injury, and patrolling, watching, patrolling the park grounds, securing all businesses and so forth, shutting down and so forth, performing bank escorts for the company and so forth. And '83, returned to Southwestern Community College to further education. Returned back to job, including to working in traffic and so forth for different companies, responding to blind alarms, checking for fire and theft and vandalism, monitoring blind activity, guarding main gate entrance during major strikes, keeping daily logs of blind activities. May of '86 through 2002, Western Carolina University position security guard and campus police officer, job included greeting guests, students for concerts, sporting events, transit center activity, escorting students to and from their vehicles after hours, patrolling campus grounds, driving chancellor to and from special events, including issuing citations, providing security for special guests at special events, confiscating illegal drugs and alcohol at proper special events, also testifying in court. In June 2002 to 2004, was employed as special security with Sonpress, position of security officer, included greeting and escorting guests to different parts of the plant, monitoring plant, alarms, surveillance equipment, logging warehouse traffic and visitors, and in and out, scanning all employees at all breaks to prevent the removal.
Time's up.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's give these gentlemen a hand. I've learned a lot, and I hope you did too. What a good panel you were. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And now we're going to shift to a different race altogether, right? Yeah.
So excuse you, gentlemen, you will take your
Okay, if you'll take your seats now, we are ready to move to another race. As many of you know, the next race that we're going to be talking about tonight is the North Carolina Senate race, District 50. And we have two wonderful candidates before us, James Dix and Ron Robinson. Welcome to you guys. You look like you need more people up here with us. You can handle it, I think.
Could we have a sheriff or two? I feel better today.
All right, we're going to follow the same format. There'll be 3 questions. They have singular questions, but we picked them, or we drew them, anonymous, what do you call it? Randomly, not anonymously. Great. So we'll also hold the applause until both of them have finished and have given their 2-minute statements. All right. Well, the first question, and then we'll let you all just pass the microphone back and forth. As North Carolina struggles to rebuild its economy, especially after the Great Recession, many would say that the recession has never really ended, especially those still looking for work and having recently had their unemployment benefits cut. In your opinion, what can we do to fix our ailing economy and put North Carolinians back to work again? Can you go?
Thank you. Hi, folks. It's great to be here tonight. I appreciate your interest in public issues. Quite frankly, the recession hasn't ended for us here in the far west. What has happened to our unemployment benefits is criminal. We've lost manufacturing jobs and seen a decrease in our tourism and small business development. And I'm running to be your next state senator because I have a clear plan for economic reform that focuses on building a coalition of leaders from 4 sectors: our government, our business leaders, our employers, and academic institutions that must join together to put North Carolina back to work. We have to stop pitting our business leaders against our employees. We have to stop the conflict between labor on one side and management on the other. You know, back after World War II, we understood as a country how important it was for corporations to have social responsibility, how important it was to be united in our efforts to create a better America for all our citizens. But it seems that lately we've forgotten that we can work together. We have to work together so that whether you're an owner, a worker, there will still be mutual prosperity. As Senator Paul Wellstone says, I believe that when we all do better, we all do better. And it's up to us to start building relationships between those 4 key groups in order to turn our economy around. If we work within this coalition of leadership to identify the needs within our business community, and we train our workforce within our academic institutions so that they are job ready and have the necessary employment skills, and we supplement our work with government grants to strengthen our efforts, we don't just try to turn our economy around, we will turn our economy around. Let's restore funding for our public schools, community colleges, and universities so that they can produce for us an educated workforce. And let's vote for those Medicaid expansion funds and create a healthier population that is able to focus on the highest wage, technology-driven, tradable jobs. Let's grow our green economy by preserving our farms, buying local, and developing our solar capabilities. Let's use our government resources to build infrastructure and provide the incentives we need to create business invitations to our community and the world outside. And finally, let's pay our people, our hardworking people who have been so forgotten by our Republican counterparts. Let's pay our people a living wage. Couldn't we all get behind that? Together, this region can become a state model for economic growth and employment. Join our team and partner with me as we work to put our region back on its feet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane. Good points. My name is Ron Robinson. It's good to see everyone here today. And I'd just like to address the same issue. Jane and I agree on a lot of issues. As a matter of fact, evidently we were both trained in Paul Wellstone. We have a very similar philosophy on things. I'd like to talk to you about the questions today because each one of the questions we were given helped to address the whole issue of economic development and bringing prosperity back to our mountains. And I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to address your question regarding how do we jumpstart our economy today and keep it moving. There's several things our General Assembly has done that stalled our economy. One has to do with the tax structure, and hopefully we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But folks, we have right now one of the highest gasoline taxes in the country. That gasoline tax is something that keeps our state from being competitive, and it also takes money right out of the pockets of the people who most need the money. We need to drop that gasoline tax back at least 10 cents and make it competitive with the states around us. That will first and foremost start putting money back into the pockets of people. The second thing we need to do is reverse the tax breaks that the rich have given themselves. Minnesota did that and started bringing prosperity back right away. The third thing I would encourage us all to do is to take that money and reinvest in unemployment benefits as well as food stamps. And folks, let's remember Jim Davis takes a lot of pride in the fact that he made people take a drug test in order to qualify for those benefits. I say no. Finally, let's think about the collaboration Jane was talking about. I think that we can use collaboration between our high schools, our community colleges, and the business community to bring good-paying jobs back to Western North Carolina. As a matter of fact, there's a high school right now in Haywood County that's done just that. The shop teacher shop teacher set up a program with the business community. He's brought in new equipment. And now the business community is coming to the shop teacher asking for more students. Those students are being paid $14 an hour when they graduate. That's bringing jobs back to Western North Carolina. Finally, we need to have affordable child care for young parents who are starting to work. And I would suggest to you, as Jane has just suggested, that it's only when we have strong schools, we improve our infrastructure, and we ensure that Medicaid is expanded for everyone, that we will have a prosperous economy in Western North Carolina and make North Carolina a great state once again.
Well, I'll just keep it because you're going to be first next.
All right.
Okay? We're taking turns here. I guess I should. Somebody might not be able to.
Fracking companies recently won the right to keep secret the chemical cocktails they pump underground during shale gas drilling in North Carolina. And they did this under a chemical disclosure rule approved by the North Carolina Mining and Energy Commission. The rule, as passed by the commission, is merely a recommendation to the state legislature, which will have final say over fracking standards later this year or next year. What is your opinion of fracking, and how will you address this issue if elected?
Can everybody hear me? No fracking in North Carolina. I grew up in Southwest Virginia, and I watched what coal mine operators did in the mountains of West Virginia with mountaintop coal mining. And we all know what happened there. I have every belief that fracking in North Carolina is the same thing as what the coal mine operators did with West Virginia, and we don't need that. We have watched this General Assembly make a joke out of climate change. They don't even want us to measure the rise of the ocean and report on it. How bad can it get? But the attack on the Department of Environment and Natural Resources is just one example of what they've done. Do you realize that they've already closed down 200 jobs or more in Diener? They've already transferred, or they're getting ready to transfer, over 1,000 people to other agencies out of Diener. And if that isn't enough, look at how they've treated Duke as they polluted Dan River and other streams in the country, in the counties. It's abysmal what they're doing in Raleigh. So my suggestion is simply this. Let's create good-paying jobs throughout the state, and let's do it by having renewable energy in place of fracking. We can do that and bring prosperity back and ensure that with clean economy, we can have tourism in Western North Carolina and create more jobs.
Well, if I took this bottle of water and I poured formaldehyde in it, a little mercury, and a little battery acid, would you folks want to drink it? And that's what they want to do when they frack with our land. If you want to know what I think about fracking, I'll use the quote, the famous quote of Jesse Helms. And that was no, 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 no. As you're sitting next next state senator, I will work to keep fracking out of North Carolina and sponsor bills that close loopholes and require public disclosure. The Mining and Energy Commission has decided that you and I don't need to know what might be in our drinking water. But I believe we have more than a right to know. We have an obligation to know. And we need to make informed environmental decisions. If you listen to your current senator and read all the fracking bills that he's sponsoring, you might think that fracking is a magic bullet that will solve everyone's problem. Fracking will solve our energy crisis. Fracking will make property owners rich. Fracking will bring jobs to our local economy. But again, this is another series of myths out of the GOP playbook. If you look out that window right there, we're sitting in one of the most beautiful places on earth. I absolutely know that we must work together to create economic reform. But there are ways to promote smart development without trading our souls and degrading our land. I was a science teacher. The shale deposits in North Carolina are too shallow. They are too close to our drinking water reserves, and none of us want the threat of harmful chemicals leaching into our water supply. Even if we were to obtain 100% of natural gas and oil under the surface of North Carolina, we would only have enough to use here for 5.5 years. I want to be clear, fracking is not good business. What price shall we place on our mountains, on our streams, and on our health? What's the return of our investment? Short-term wealth generation by a few greedy entrepreneurs is not worth the threat of our public safety. Join my team. Together, let's work to lower our energy consumption, generate green business, and invest in solar energy. Let's work to protect our environment. Thank you.
One more question for these candidates. North Carolina has long been known as a leader in education, from its early childhood programs all the way up to graduate studies. With all the recent changes instituted by the North Carolina General Assembly and signed off on by Governor McCrory, we have quickly descended in the quality of education rankings among states to near the bottom of the list. What are the first steps necessary in regaining the quality education that our students deserve in North Carolina?
North Carolina has undergone drastic changes in public education. Where we were once a leader, we are now 48th in per pupil spending, 46th in average teacher salaries, and 48th in new teacher salaries. This is intolerable. The North Carolina GOP and Jim Davis will tell you that they've added jobs, that they've increased spending, and that teachers would see larger paychecks due to the tax reform. But we all know that not only have they gutted our system from early childhood to the university level, they are proud of all they have accomplished in the short period that they've managed to do it in. These cuts don't just rob our students and teachers, they rob all of us. They erode our future. And with my 38-year history in public education, this is one of the issues that has me fired up. I'm not willing to stand by and watch the General Assembly destroy something that we've spent our entire lifetimes working to build. We can do better than this. The first step in regaining a quality education is together, let's restore funding to our public schools to ensure that every child receives a quality education. Funding should be restored across the board, from pre-K all the way up to the university level. We all know that the problem just isn't that the budget was slashed, but rather that those cuts have fallen hardest on those who needed it the most. When we have statistical data that shows how valuable our preschool funding is at reducing the socioeconomic achievement gap, And we have senators in place who vote to reduce the number of slots available. We have a major disconnect in our state. If we are serious about wanting our children to compete in the global economy, we must not hesitate to invest in our children. The second step in regaining a quality education is that we start paying teachers what they deserve. And by the way, state employees deserve the same treatment. We must honor advanced degrees and support due process rights, because it's become a travesty that we aren't doing this. The very people that we rely on to dry tears, to impart wisdom and critical thinking, who give every bit of themselves, we need to respect them and give them a raise. Don't you think it's time that we invest in our teachers? So I want you to know what I'll do as your next state senator. I'll work for a pay raise for all state employees. I'll work to restore funding to our programs that help those who are the most needy. And I will introduce bills to increase textbook funding, secure due process rights, and eliminate the draining of our public school resources through privatization. I will cast every vote with the knowledge that teachers and students are counting on me. Thank you.
I agree with Jane. Let me start at the beginning. The reason we're in the mess we're in is because we have a General Assembly that wants to privatize our schools. And every superintendent that I've talked to says they can't figure out what in the world this General Assembly is doing if it's not to privatize our schools. So I say the first thing that we have to do is recognize the fact that we have a roller coaster going through our state right now, trying to steamroller us into privatization of our public education, and it's not going to happen. Now, how do we stop it from happening? There are three things that we need to do. In talking with the schools, one of the things I've learned is that you can't handle schools any differently than a business. In any business, you have to have resources, you have to have funding, you have to have people in the right places trained to do the jobs. If you don't have those things in a business doesn't succeed. That's exactly what's happening in our schools. The schools do not have the funding that Jane was talking about. We don't have the teachers that we need. There's not one school in Western North Carolina that's got the textbooks that they need. The textbooks are either out of date or insufficient. Now, how do you expect teachers to teach and to take on a new curriculum if they don't have textbooks? I don't understand. But when we expect teachers to do the jobs they've got to do without the resources to do it, it's a prescription for failure, and that's exactly what we're looking at. So I have a suggestion for the General Assembly and for all of us in this room. The first thing that we do is we pay teachers at the national average to stop the bleeding. Teachers are leaving our school system because they're not being paid. The second thing that we do is we put more teachers in the classroom, and that includes teachers' assistants. And by the way, we need to pay teachers' assistants too. They haven't had a pay raise in over 10 years, I understand. When it comes to resources, we need to increase the teacher or include the Teaching Fellows program. We need to have textbooks back in the classroom, early childhood development. We need to give principals and superintendents more flexibility in the way they manage the schools. We need to get rid of vouchers, and we need to hold charter schools to the same standards. We need to revitalize MCAT so that it can support the schools. And finally, folks, we need to create tuition-free community colleges and state universities. Other states are starting to do that. We can do it too. Now, finally, I will not support privatization of our schools, and I will not allow any privateer to come into our state and try to maximize profits at the expense of our children. One more finally. All right, I'm through. We heard the sheriff candidates talking about the risk in schools. Folks, do you realize that they have allowed guns on school campuses? I will fight to close that legislation that allows guns on school campuses. That's an outrage. And that's what I'll do to support you as your state senator.
Well, we learned a lot already about you guys, but we want you to have your 2 minutes. 2 minutes of fame here as you talk about what has driven you to take this leap, and what would be your main focus, if you would. And Jane, you can go first.
I'll just do without that. I'm not a teacher.
Uh-oh, she's a
I'm Jane Hips, and I'm running for the state senate. There's probably something you don't know about me, and that was my family was probably one paycheck away from poverty. I grew up in what are those things? Chicken feed sack dresses, and it itched a little bit. And I had problems with them when I got to the 2nd grade because some little smart aleck boy called them chicken manure sacks, and I went home and I said, I'm not wearing those anymore. But my father had a job. He had a good, strong work ethic. He had good health, and he worked for a business that was secure. And if there had been one of those variables that had been any different, my life could have been a disaster. And I also had a family that believed in strong education. And I'm running for the state senate because I believe in strong education. I believe in a plan for economic recovery. And I believe in increased access to health care. I'm the only candidate with 38 years in public school education. I'm the only candidate with a clear plan for economic recovery. And I'm the only candidate who has a nursing degree, and I'm a nurse practitioner. And I share the same values that you share. And what I want us to see, I want us to give the teachers and students the respect that they deserve and fully fund public school education. I want us to say that North Carolina is again open for business, and we'll provide the infrastructure and give those incentives so that people will know that we're a viable economy. And I want to stand up for all people for health care. I want to provide Medicaid for all of our people so that we can all be healthy. I ask for your vote. I ask for your support. And I invite you to join my team. I ask you to volunteer to help me with this campaign. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you, Jane.
I grew up in a small town in Tazewell, Virginia. Appalachian Mountains, about 2 ridges over from here as the crow flies. Recently, I went back to see Tazewell, and most of the stores were boarded up. That's why I'm running for office. I've worked in business most of my life. I understand how business works, and I do not want to see the economic downturn in western North Carolina that we've been experiencing in southwest Virginia. I don't want to see any of our towns boarded up. I'm running for office because I think I've got the background to keep that from happening. Working in business, working in communities, and talking with the economic development folks throughout western North Carolina, we've got a plan in place to support each one of the counties with infrastructure, bringing in good paying jobs, and supporting everyone with health care for everyone. I see a day when we will have companies coming here and knocking down our doors to come here because of world-class schools. I see a day when our children graduate from college debt-free, and our children go to work in good paying jobs, and our families stay here rather than having to leave. I also see a day in which our families live long and healthy lives, and we have no infant mortality because we have health care for everyone. And I see a day when we have clean streams, we have clean air, and visitors come from all over the world to share with us the things that we enjoy and help us grow our economy. That's why I'm running for office. I hope that you will hold me accountable for having more teachers in classrooms, for having teachers paid better, for having companies move out here, and I hope you hold me accountable for having more people having access to health care. By doing that, we make every one of our communities an even better place to live for everybody living here, and that's why I'm running for office. I'm Ron Robinson, and I want your vote, and I thank you.
Thank you all very much for your insightful presentation and your good attention. We're going to shift here a little bit.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Virginia Burl Milligan. I'm Vice President of the Women's Democratic Party in Jackson County. I want to take a few minutes and recognize some folks. I want to recognize our timekeepers for doing a great job. I want to recognize our Democratic men for helping us get set up this afternoon. And I want to thank all of y'all for being here. We're going to take just a few minutes. If you want to stand and stretch just a little bit while the candidates who are non-contested can come up front.